Now we're going to discuss the California Plumbing Code, Chapter 7, which deals with sanitary drainage. This particular chapter in the California Plumbing Code is divided into two main topics or areas, and they are building drainage, which is Part 1, and building sewer, which is included in Part 2. It's important to understand what this terminology means. The building drainage is defined as that part of the lowest piping of a drainage system that receives discharge from soil, waste, or other drainage pipes inside the walls of the building and conveys it to the building sewer beginning approximately 2 feet outside of the building wall. So building drainage is the drainage system inside of a building. Building sewer, on the other hand, is that part of the horizontal piping of a drainage system that extends from the end of the building drain, remember that's approximately 2 feet outside the building, and that receives the discharge of the building drain and conveys it to the public sewer. So the difference between the two is drainage. Building drainage is the drainage inside the building, and building sewer is the transportation of the building drainage outside of the building to the public or the private sewer system. So again, Part 1 deals with the building drainage system. And just like most of the plumbing chapters, the first part of most chapters addresses the material requirements or the permitted materials to be used. And Section 701.2 is no different. It addresses drainage piping that's permitted to be used within the building walls, and it stipulates that no galvanized wrought iron, galvanized steel, or stainless steel pipe is permitted to be installed underground or within 6 inches of grade. Continuing now with drainage piping, ABS and PVC DWV, standing for drain, waste, and vent, obviously, piping must be installed in accordance with tables 701.2 and 1701.1, and also the fire stop protection requirements located in the California Building Code. And this indicates a new amendment to the 2019 California Plumbing Code. No VCP, which is vitrified clay pipe, or fittings are permitted to be installed above ground. In fact, they're required to be installed a minimum of 12 inches below ground. Copper pipe may also be used for drainage piping if it's designated as DWV, which stands for drain, waste, and vent. And this particular piping is identified by yellow marking down the sides of it. Materials may also comply with the new table, which is 1701.2, when the architect or engineer proposes using alternate materials and methods of construction on the project. Whenever changes in direction occur in drainage piping, the appropriate and correct materials have got to be used, and only approved fittings of 1/16, 1/8, or 1/6 bends or other approved fittings of equivalent sweep may be permitted to be used for changing direction of drainage piping. These approved fittings have 3 particular characteristics that identify them and distinguish them from other piping. And these 3 characteristics are: they have a smooth interior waterway, they are reamed to full interior bore dimensions, and they're sloped 1/4 inch per foot minimum grade inside the actual fittings. Changes in direction from horizontal to vertical are made with 45 degree, 60 degree Ys, or 60 degree Ys, a combi, which is a combination Y and 1/8 bend, santee, a tapped santee, or other approved fitting of equivalent sweep. Horizontal to horizontal and vertical to horizontal changes in direction are permitted to be made with 45 degree Ys, again combis, and other approved fittings of equivalent sweep. Section 707 addresses the requirements for cleanouts installed in drainage piping. And an approved body, obviously a fitting, has got to be installed, and that particular fitting has to be accompanied with an approved gas-tight, watertight plug. The cleanouts have got to be readily accessible. They've got to be above ground, except when they're obviously covered by an approved cover plate. And they need to be located at each horizontal drainage pipe upper terminal. They've got to be located for each 100 lineal feet of piping, and an aggregate horizontal change in direction that exceeds 135 degrees. Required access and clearances must be maintained. Basically for 2-inch pipe or less, 18 inches clear has got to be maintained to access the cleanout, and for greater than 2-inch diameter pipe, 24 inches in the clear must be provided to access the cleanout. They are required above each fixture connection at each urinal, which became a new code requirement in the 2016 California Plumbing Code. So that's important to be checking for as well, looking for those cleanouts. As a follow-up from the last slide, here's an image that basically depicts what you would expect to see from now on with new construction for urinals, where you can see where the arrows are showing the cleanout covers above each of the urinals. Section 708 of the California Plumbing Code addresses the minimum required slopes for drainage piping. Basically, the drainage piping has got to maintain a uniform slope towards the point of disposal, and the standard slope is 1/4 inch per foot minimum. However, if the pipe diameter exceeds 4 inch, is equal to or exceeds 4 inch in diameter, a 1/8 inch per foot minimum slope is permitted where existing conditions prohibit a standard 1/4 inch per foot slope. Horizontal drainage piping has also got to be tested for leaks, as does the associated vent piping. And basically these lines are tested with water using a 10-foot head, and the water test is going to last for 15 minutes. Obviously no leaks are permitted, and air is also permitted to be used at 5 psi for 15 minutes minimum as an alternate, except in the situations where plastic piping is used, because again, with very few exceptions, pressure testing of plastic piping using air is not permitted. Okay, now we're going to start discussing actual building sewers, which is part 2 of chapter 7. And as we discussed before, that the building sewer is basically the drainage piping that receives the building drainage and starts roughly about 2 feet outside the building perimeter and proceeds to the point of connection to the private or the public sewer. There is a new code amendment in section 715.3, which addresses existing sewers, and basically it currently says the replacement of existing building sewer and storm sewers using trenchless methodology must be installed in accordance with ASTM F1216. However, there's a couple of exceptions which are brand new and somewhat controversial, and they are: number 1, cast iron shall not be repaired or replaced using trenchless methods, and number 2, replacement using cured-in-place pipeliners is not permitted for use on collapsed or compromised piping. Now, we don't see this a lot on school projects or essential services building projects. However, these last 2 items are new. They are certainly going to adversely affect the trenchless technology that's been used for decades, and we're just going to let that work itself out, but it was worth mentioning and letting you all know that that is a new amendment to the current 2019 CPC. Continuing with building sewer requirements for grade support and protection of building sewers, it's basically the same as Section 708 for building drainage, in that a quarter-inch per foot minimum is what is generally required for the slope for building sewers. And there is an allowance again for pipes that have a diameter between 4 inches and 6 inches. An 1/8 inch per foot slope is acceptable. And in situations where the pipe exceeds or equals 8 inches in diameter, then a 1/16 inch per foot minimum slope is permitted. Section 719 addresses the requirements for cleanouts in building sewer systems. And as a general rule, the intersection between the building drainage and the building sewer piping, which is around or approximately 2 feet outside the building perimeter, is required to have a cleanout. However, this particular intersection is somewhat general in nature, and the cleanout is permitted to be either inside or outside the building, and is generally accepted to be within just a few feet of the inside or outside perimeter of the building. Obviously, the building footing can be a conflict, so that's why this particular dimension is somewhat generalized. A cleanout is also required to be installed in the building sewer line at 100-foot intervals, and obviously any 135-degree change in horizontal direction. And it's not uncommon to see these cleanouts installed at 200-foot intervals in situations where the actual cleanout that's used is a two-way cleanout. So the maintenance personnel can actually run their snake both uphill and downhill in that exact same line using a two-way cleanout. And obviously that just helps save materials costs. Section 720 for sewer and water pipes located in common trenches is basically the same as what we've previously discussed from Section 609.2, which is that in order to allow sewer and water pipes to be in the same trench at the same elevation, they have to be comprised of materials that are permitted to be used above ground and inside of a building. And in the event that either the water pipe or the sewer pipe is made of materials that is not acceptable for use above ground inside of a building, then the standard requirements for separation apply. And to recap, that is, the water pipe has got to be located a minimum of 12 inches above the top of the sewer pipe. And if they're running parallel, then the water pipe has also a requirement to be 12 inches minimum offset to the side of the closest edge of the sewer pipe. The image on the right hand side of this slide depicts a common situation where a vitrified clay pipe used as a sewer pipe is being installed in the lower portion of a trench, and allowances are being made for the associated water pipe to be installed above and in the picture you can see to the right of the sewer pipe, maintaining the required minimum 12 inches of separation. Section 723 identifies the requirements for the building sewer test, and this differs somewhat from the building drainage test in that the building sewer lines will certainly be tested with water, but the test does not require a 10-foot head. The only requirement is that the water is installed in the building sewer lines that it's completely filled from the lowest to the highest point, and the inspector would verify that the piping maintains a watertight situation. Air, of course, is again permitted to be used. Only 5 psi air is required minimum for the air test, and it's got to last for 15 minutes with no leaks. And again, the air test is not permitted for any type of plastic building sewer piping.